I used to believe my life was a perfect story, 15 years beside the woman I loved, building a family with all my heart, filled with sweet memories I thought would never fade. But then, on one fateful night, everything I had built shattered, collapsed beneath my feet when the smart TV lit up, not with images of a happy family, but with a series of messages, intimate words between my wife and her closest friend. I stood there, my heart choking, every message cutting deep into my soul. I miss you, I can't sleep without your goodnight kiss. Those words, those pictures, secrets I thought were ours alone, mercilessly exposed on that screen. 15 years, not years of genuine love, but years of betrayal and lies. I couldn't believe my eyes, yet I couldn't deny the truth laid bare before me. My world spun, anger raging, pain overwhelming, despair sinking in. Alone, in the silent room, next to the steady breathing of my wife fast asleep, unaware that our nightmare had just begun. All my dreams, all my plans, suddenly crumbled into pieces at my feet. What would you do if it were you? Could you stay calm, knowing the one you loved, the person you built your home with, had betrayed you for so many years? Share your thoughts and feelings below. This story is far from over, and I will take you through the fight, the confrontations, and the hardest decisions I ever faced. It began as an ordinary, even joyful evening. Nothing about that night gave away the storm waiting to explode in our living room. My wife Amy, our 2 daughters away at their grandparents', and I were on a group video call to celebrate John's birthday. The kind of casual, friendly night where laughter floats easily, and the world feels just a little lighter. Amy, ever the social butterfly despite choosing to be a homemaker, had connected her phone to our smart TV so we could all sit back and relax. But then, around midnight, when the party's energy had waned and the night grew quiet, Amy drifted off to sleep on the couch. I stayed up. The call disconnected suddenly, and that's when my world tilted. The TV screen flickered, and instead of John's familiar face, a flood of unread WhatsApp messages popped up, messages sent not to me, but from a contact saved as Lifeline with a heart emoji beside the name. Curiosity pried open a door I wished had stayed closed. I hesitated. Was I invading her privacy? But the voice inside me screamed for answers. I clicked. And what I saw unraveled me entirely. The messages weren't innocent exchanges between old friends. They were tender whispers of affection, longing notes, and even photos, intimate glimpses into a life I was never a part of. 15 years of marriage, 15 years of shared hopes and dreams, now stained with betrayal hidden in plain sight. I remember my breath caught in my throat. The disbelief crashed over me like a tidal wave. Anger and sorrow wrestled for dominion inside my chest. Was this the same woman who kissed me goodnight? Who told me she loved me? Who raised our children by my side? Amy woke abruptly, the panic in her eyes unmistakable when she saw what I was staring at. She tore the remote away and shut off the TV like a desperate prisoner trying to hide the truth. Her voice trembled as she begged me to listen, to understand. Words I wasn't sure my shattered heart could bear. In that fractured silence, I battled the fiercest war I've ever known, not against her, but within myself. Part of me screamed for confrontation, for answers, for justice. Another part sank into numbness, a cold void swallowing any sense of certainty I once had. The home we'd built felt like unfamiliar territory, a place now haunted by secrets and lies. And amid the chaos, a question gnawed relentlessly: how do I protect my girls from this storm? How do I face a future rewritten by heartbreak? That night was more than a revelation, it was the fracture point between what was and what could never be again. But it was also the beginning of a long journey, through anger, pain, and ultimately, the search for truth and healing. As I sit here sharing this, I want to ask you, what would you do if you found your entire life unraveling on a screen you never meant to see? How do you hold on to yourself when everything you believed in crumbles? Stay with me as I take you deeper into the confessions, confrontations, and the emotional hellfire that followed. Because this story isn't just mine, it's about trust, betrayal, and the fight to reclaim life from the ashes. In the eerie silence that followed that shattering night, I found myself trapped in a relentless, haunting search through the past. Those messages weren't just fleeting moments of weakness, they revealed a secret life my wife Amy had lived alongside me for 15 years. 15 years. The disbelief still hits me every time I say it aloud. How could someone weave a double life for so long, right under my nose? As I traced back through the messages and memories, another figure emerged, Matt. Amy's childhood friend, her once neighbor, and now the man who had occupied the space I thought was ours alone. I remembered meeting him many times, smiling politely, never suspecting that those encounters were shadows of something far darker. Amy had often told me that their relationship was purely platonic, that Matt wasn't interested in women. But the flood of texts, "I can't sleep without your goodnight kiss, you were amazing today," and worse, the photos, told a story that couldn't be spun away. This wasn't just a secret affair, it was a parallel existence. A life where my wife shared every intimate detail she never shared with me. I thought about the late nights Amy stayed up on her phone, the moments when she claimed to be just tired or overworked, and how I never questioned them deeply enough. My mind raced through memories, those missed anniversaries, the cold silences after arguments, the smiles that felt rehearsed. Had I been blind? Was I complicit in my own heartbreak? The more I dug, the more agonizing it became. Each message was a dagger, each confession a wound. Yet within the pain, I knew I had to face this nightmare fully. I needed the truth, even if it meant facing the darkness of betrayal. Amy's confession later confirmed the unthinkable. Their relationship had started long before we married, survived countless breaks, and somehow endured all the while I was building a life with her. Adding to the turmoil, I reflected on Matt. A man who never held a steady job, supported by his parents' rentals, reluctant to grow up, yet somehow wrapped around Amy's heart. In contrast, I had worked myself to exhaustion to provide for our family, believing we were building something real, something lasting. The thought struck me with brutal clarity: our lives had diverged, and I was living a lie. But this revelation wasn't just about anger or betrayal. It was about confronting my own failures. Where did I go wrong? What signs did I miss? And in wrestling with those questions, I felt the seeds of a painful kind of growth, a reluctant maturity born from heartbreak. I realized this was no longer about just her or him, but about rebuilding a shattered world. At the same time, I struggled with a gnawing fear: how much of this truth could I expose without tearing the lives of our daughters apart? How to protect them when every foundation they knew was crumbling? Friends and family became uneasy characters on this stage. The worried calls from my parents, the cautious concern from Amy's family, and the whispered judgments from old friends. No one knew how to navigate this complicated battlefield. And as whispers of betrayal spread, the weight on my chest grew heavier. This chapter of my life became a crossroad between devastation and survival. I had to decide whether to let this betrayal consume me or find a way to reclaim my future. The journey ahead was daunting and uncertain. The moment had come. The confrontation I had both dreaded and needed. Bringing the truth out into the open was like pulling a thread on a fragile tapestry, threatening to unravel everything. I invited Amy's parents over, alongside mine, hoping that in the presence of family, we could find some clarity or at least a way forward. Instead, what unfolded was a storm fiercer than any I'd faced alone. Amy arrived first, her face a mask of desperation and shame. I held the phone tight. The pictures of the WhatsApp messages and screenshots flashing in my mind like incriminating evidence fueling the fire. The room thickened with tension as I dropped the bombshell, laying the truth bare for everyone to see. The silence that followed was suffocating, and then came the flood of emotions. Her eyes welled up with tears, pleading for forgiveness, begging them to see her as more than her mistakes. My parents' faces twisted in shock and sadness, while Amy's family was torn between disbelief and protective instincts. Voices rose, accusations flew, and anger filled the air. Amy's mother, a woman I once saw as kind and nurturing, now looked lost, her trembling voice filled with hurt as she asked whether this was truly her daughter's choice or if there was something else at play. My father's eyes never left Amy, his disappointment palpable. In the midst of this chaos, Amy shifted blame to me, accusing me of conspiracy, of turning everyone against her. Her trembling defense was heartbreaking yet infuriating. I felt my own heart breaking anew, not only from betrayal but witnessing the family ties strain, friendships falter, and the people I loved caught in a war they neither wanted nor deserved. The daughters, though not present, loomed over every word spoken, their innocence hanging by a thread. As words clashed and emotions spilled over, I grappled with an overwhelming mix of rage, sorrow, and a reluctant compassion for the woman I once called my partner. The warmth and trust we shared now felt like ashes scattered in the wind. Yet amidst the chaos, I realized something profound: the truth, painful as it was, had ripped open the facade everyone lived behind. The masks were off. And from this raw exposure came the first step towards something real, an honest reckoning. I could feel the heavy weight of responsibility settle on me once more, not just as a husband betrayed, but as a father and son, trying to navigate fractured loyalties without losing myself or the family left intact. I had to decide if this was the breaking point or the moment to start healing. Amy, sobbing but defiant, vowed to mend what she broke, promising to sever ties with Matt. Her words hung in the air, fragile, uncertain. As we all stood on this emotional battlefield, I knew there was no going back to the life we had. The next steps would be about survival, redefinition, and ultimately, about protecting the future of our children. After the storm of confrontation, silence settled over the house like a thick fog, but inside me, turmoil raged more fiercely than ever. The truth had laid bare every crack in our marriage, and I knew the path forward was no longer one of reconciliation but of painful separation. The decision to divorce was not sudden, but it felt irreversible, an inevitable collapse of everything I once believed in. Walking into the lawyer's office that Monday morning, my hands trembled slightly as I explained the years of betrayal, the hidden affair, and my desperation to protect our daughters from the fallout. My lawyer listened quietly, then laid out the battlefield ahead: custody battles, asset division, and the long, brutal process of unraveling a life built on lies. I wrestled with my wounds, but it wasn't just my own broken heart I feared. I thought most about Emma and Ella, my two young daughters who had done nothing wrong yet were already caught in this nightmare. How do you explain to children that their parents no longer love each other? How do I shield their innocence while the foundation of their home crumbles beneath them? That week passed in a blur. Amy, in her fragile attempts to cling to what remained, begged me to reconsider, promising to cut all ties with Matt. But trust once shattered isn't easily rebuilt. I witnessed her desperate nightly cries, the pleading messages, but within me simmered a cold resolve: our family would never be the same. My parents and in-laws became my anchors during this time, offering a semblance of stability amidst chaos. Their concern wasn't just for me but for the girls. Keeping them safe, surrounded by love, while their world was shaking apart. Yet even in familial support, the journey was lonely. No one could feel exactly what I felt inside. There was a haunting question I couldn't silence: what kind of future awaited my daughters? Would they grow up scarred by the betrayal and broken home? Could I be the father they needed, the protector against pain, the guide toward healing? The legal process was grueling. Amy claimed a share of our house, yet her lack of stable employment and her choices made the fight clear-cut in my favor. Still, the financial and emotional toll weighed heavily. These battles were not just about property or custody, they were battles for trust, dignity, and the hope that my daughters could still believe in love and family. One sleepless night, staring at the ceiling in my dark room, I found a sliver of determination stir within me. This divorce wouldn't be the end. It would be a new beginning. For me, for Emma and Ella, and for the life we would rebuild from these ashes. But this was only the start. The challenge of explaining everything to my girls loomed ahead, a challenge fraught with heartbreak and the need for delicate honesty. The hardest part, by far, was telling Emma and Ella. Two bright, curious girls who believed in fairy tales and forever families. Breaking the news of our unraveling marriage felt like tearing a hole in their world, and every fiber of my being screamed to shield them from the storm. But I knew the truth, no matter how carefully hidden, had already begun to seep through the cracks. Amy wanted to frame it as a change caused by my work transfer, a convenient story to soften the blow. But the girls, wise beyond their years, were not fooled. I still remember the sharpness in Emma's voice when she bluntly asked, "Are you and Mom getting divorced?" Ella's eyes welled up, searching my face for reassurance I felt powerless to give. In that moment, the weight of responsibility crashed down on me, not only as a betrayed husband but as a father trying desperately to hold his children's shattered hearts together. I told them simply and gently that Mom and I no longer loved each other like we used to, and that though we would live apart, they would always be loved by both of us. It felt both necessary and cruel, a paradox I hadn't prepared myself for. As emotions ran high, Amy tried to weave half-truths and distractions, attempting to protect them and herself. But her guarded silence and tearful pleas only deepened the confusion for the girls, who instinctively knew something was wrong beyond what was being said. I caught myself stealing glances at their faces, watching the mix of fear, confusion, and growing mistrust that I dreaded but expected. Over the following days, I became acutely aware of the fragile threads that held their innocence in place. Conversations turned clinical at times as neighbors tried to offer unsolicited advice, and even well-meaning family members awkwardly navigated their roles. I was determined to keep their world as stable as possible, yet also knew that shielding them entirely was impossible. Therapy was something I initially resisted, proud to be their rock and unsure if bringing strangers into our pain was right. But soon I realized this was more than just about me needing to heal. Emma and Ella needed a safe space to voice fears and ask questions that I couldn't always answer. Watching them slowly open up in sessions was both heartbreaking and hopeful, like watching wildflowers pushing through cracks in concrete. I also struggled with my own demons, guilt for exposing them to my anger and sadness, fear that the betrayal would forever shape their view of love and trust. Night after night, I sat alone, wondering how to be whole enough to raise them in a world where their foundation had fractured so violently. Supporting Amy in confronting her failures as a mother was another difficult battle. She feared the girls' judgment, begged for time, yet hesitated to fully own her role in the pain. Our conversations were tense, often threaded with blame and desperation, but beneath it all was a mutual desire to protect the children even while the family crumbled around them. Through it all, I came to understand that the greatest act of love was not to hide the truth, but to face it with honesty and courage. It meant reassuring my daughters over and over that they were safe, cherished, and never at fault. Their resilience surprised me. And with every tear and every brave smile, I found a little more strength to carry us forward. As this chapter closes, the question remains: how do you rebuild trust and hope when the very people who painted your childhood have unraveled before your eyes? After the storm, the betrayal, the confrontation, the heartbreak, I found myself standing on the edge of an unfamiliar world. The life I knew was gone, shattered beyond repair. Yet amid the wreckage, a stubborn ember of hope flickered, urging me to keep moving forward. Healing wasn't a linear path, it was a jagged climb through grief, anger, and self-discovery. At first, mornings came heavy and hollow. The house, once full of laughter and shared dreams, felt cold and eerily quiet. I carried the weight of loss not only for the marriage but for the vision of the family we once were. Nights were the hardest, when silence magnified the ache, memories overwhelmed, and questions without answers haunted me. Could I ever trust again? Could I rebuild what had been ripped away? Therapy became my sanctuary. I was hesitant at first, pride, shame, and fear clouding my steps. But step by step, session by session, I began unraveling the knots inside. I wasn't alone. My daughters, too, sought refuge in therapy, learning to voice their confusion and pain in ways they hadn't dared before. Together, slowly, we rebuilt our fractured bonds, anchored not in illusions, but in raw honesty and renewed love. Amy's role faded into the background, sometimes a ghost of what was, sometimes a storm we had weathered. While she wrestled with her own consequences, I focused on raising Emma and Ella in a world truthful but loving. Their resilience astonished me. Watching them laugh again, play without fear, and dream beyond pain was a balm to my soul. Family and friends, once split by the scandal, gradually found ways to support us. My parents, steady and unwavering, became pillars of strength. Their quiet presence reminded me that love could endure even through betrayal. Old friends distanced themselves, others stepped closer, teaching me the complex dance of forgiveness, not for Amy, but for myself and my children. There were days when I faltered. Moments of doubt and loneliness when the past seemed to claw its way back. But each setback was met with a deeper understanding. Healing is messy, nonlinear, and deeply personal. It demands patience, courage, and above all, compassion. Along this painful journey, I also began to rediscover myself. The man broken by lies slowly turned into a father fighting fiercely for his children, a man rebuilding his identity beyond the shadows of betrayal. Small victories. Like a shared smile with my daughters, a peaceful evening by myself, even the first time I stepped back into the dating world, marked new chapters of hope. Ultimately, this story, my story, is about survival. About learning that even from the darkest nights, dawn will come. About embracing change, embracing pain, and choosing to believe in happiness again. I want to leave you with a question: have you ever faced a life-shattering betrayal? How did you find your way back? Share your stories and thoughts in the comments. Because healing is not a journey we walk alone. Thank you for staying with me through this deeply personal story. Remember, no matter how broken we feel, the possibility of new beginnings always waits just beyond the horizon. If you found this story meaningful, please like and subscribe to join me on this ongoing journey of truth and resilience.